What's up guys, my name's Liam and today we're going to be doing a review on the highly anticipated Keychron M3 Mini. Now, normally in this part of the intro, I'll usually say, is this the gaming mouse for you? However, I think the better question here is this actually even a gaming mouse? Let's check it out. Alright guys, and here we got the box of the Keychron M3 mini wireless mouse. Here's what the front of it looks like, and on the back here, just go over some of the details. 3395 sensor, up to 70 hours of battery life, 1000 hertz polling rate. They claim 57 grams, we'll test that out. Looks like they have Huano micro switches in here, 80 million clicks. So now that we got those features out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the box and see what's included with the mouse. Inside at the top here, looks like it does come with a user manual. Over here to the left, we got the mouse, and I actually opted for the white colorway here. Bottom of the mouse, top right there. All right, and included in the box, it looks like you do get a cable here. However, this is a USB-C to USB-C type cable. Looks like there also comes with a couple of different dongles. So they give you two options. This is a 2.4 gigahertz dongle that's a USB-C connectivity. And then they also give you this dongle adapter here. And then you get the original type A connector for the USB dongle as well. So that's a pretty cool feature. This is one of the only mice that I've actually seen a USB-C 2.4 gigahertz receiver actually included with the mouse. And then it also looks like they do have an adapter in here as well. So it's the USB-C adapter to the USB type A. So starting at the bottom of the mouse here, it does have these white PTFE style skates. And I do want to say that these skates, not really the biggest fan of them. They're a little bit harder, they're not terrible, but they don't really have like necessarily the best premium glide or anything like that I've noticed. And then coming over here to the functionality, you get your power button here in the middle. If you turn the power button to the right, it actually enables Bluetooth mode. Turn it in the middle to turn it off. And then over here, if you were to push it towards the left side, that enables the 2.4 gigahertz dongles. And then off to the right here, you do have a button, and this actually controls your polling rate. I believe it goes from 125 hertz, 500 hertz, up to 1000 hertz polling rate. And then over here on the left side, this button controls the DPI of the mouse. So coming back over here to the top, when using this mouse, I found that there's some incredibly unique features about the mouse. And first off, we'll start with the coating. The coating just feels like your typical plastic coating. It kind of almost feels like it has like an eggshell texture to the top surface here. And the very first thing I noticed was how they put these unique little, I don't know what they are, caltrop looking grooves here on the side. They're supposed to give you extra grip and texture on the mouse. And I want to let you guys know that right off the bat, I am not at all a fan of what they did here, because this is like little pieces of plastic. I'll give you guys a zoomed up shot here, but it's just literally like little pieces of textured plastic that stick up. They're kind of scratchy, they're kind of sharp, they're very rough. This isn't soft or anything, this is straight plastic. So for me personally, the feeling of this textured plastic rubbing up against your fingers, it's really aggressive, it's really rough, and it was truly really bothering my fingers. It was a rather uncomfortable experience, and it did give me a hard time actually getting comfortable with this mouse and gripping this. I would absolutely have to either sand these down or get side grips for it, no question about it. When it comes to the shell, this is kind of a softer feeling type plastic. Now, I am pushing very hard, but as you can see, you can't activate the side buttons here. It does bend in quite a bit. I want to let you guys know that I'm pushing incredibly hard. This is nothing that you notice if you're just gripping the mouse normally. And no matter how much I squeeze one hand, I don't really get too much flex or notice it being too much of a bother or an issue. And when it comes to the buttons, I feel like the buttons, mouse 1 and mouse 2, even the side buttons, honestly are kind of holding it back quite a bit. Now let me show you what I'm talking about. One thing that's really weird about the buttons on mouse 1 and mouse 2 here is they're very soft. Like I'm talking extremely soft. Look at that bend and that flex. You can actually push it down into the actual frame of the body of the mouse. And I'm not sure if you can see there, but it like bends up, and you can sit here and say, yeah, you're being crazy with it right now, you're pushing really hard, but it's just very noticeable. If I were just to push down and click there, I'm sure you can probably see that they're just really loose and bendy. The interesting thing is, however, is there's not really a whole lot of left to right side play, which is a good thing. However, there's a lot of tipping and teetering going on here. So the button just kind of moves all over the place. And one thing that I found really interesting when I was testing this out is look at all the rock that this has. Like I'm pushing the button from the back right here. And I guess you can't actually activate the button. When I was pushing quite harder and testing out earlier, I wasn't able to activate the button, but I guess if you do push like really hard, that you can activate it. But as you can see here, it just really tips around. There's a lot of pre-travel, like I'm talking like a ton. Look at that. You can like push this into the side and it bottoms out on the frame, and it doesn't usually activate the switch. So some really loose buttons there, mouse 1, mouse 2, and overall the click feeling, I mean, honestly, it just feels really muddy. It's they were a lot harder to press when I first got out of the box. They have gotten a little bit lighter, but still overall these switches feel very like muddy, heavy. And honestly, when I was testing out this mouse in game, it was pretty difficult to get used to and use. You know, I was able to pull it off eventually, but just it was definitely a different experience from anything that I've ever used before. Next up, when it comes to the scroll wheel is fine. Normal scroll wheel, no issues there. The button, when you push it in, it does feel kind of rubbery or kind of spongy. But aside from that, not too many issues with the scroll wheel. Coming over to the side buttons, however, same issue on the side buttons. A ton of pre-travel. And if you push it more towards the front, I mean, you still get a ton of pre-travel, but not as much. But look at this. You can push this thing in the back like almost all the way. And look at that. That's not even activating the switch. I activated it like once while doing that. Still same thing on the front button. It's not as bad on the front button, but on the rear side button here, it does feel really spongy and really mushy. And then as far as the post travel goes, you can push the buttons in here quite a bit. And there is a lot of play, a lot of rocking on the side buttons. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll drop a sound test on the switches here. I'll try and demonstrate like the bending going on around on the buttons and stuff like that, so you guys get a better visual and audio cue on what I'm talking about. And then when it comes to the weight and the balance, it looks like the weight is coming in at 57.7 grams. The actual balance on this mouse, it definitely is off. It feels a little bit more rear heavy, so you're getting more of the weight in the back of the mouse. And then when it comes to the side balance, as you can see, definitely heavier towards the left side of the side button. And when it comes to using the software, there's actually software that you can download. A couple of things that I noticed when I installed the software is this mouse felt really weird out of the box. My copy did come with sensor ripple enabled, so I disabled that. It also had motion sync enabled, and it had a debounce time of 8 milliseconds, I believe. So what I did is I turned the debounce time all the way down on it, and I was playing around with it, and out of the box, this thing just felt really weird to me. So can this mouse be used for gaming? It can, but I definitely feel like it is a very obvious, noticeable difference that it doesn't compete with some of the top tier gaming mice out there on the market. For starters, aside from some of the issues that I'd mentioned here, the sensor performance on this mouse, even though it claims there's a 3395 sensor in it, the very second that I set this on my desk and launched Apex Legends, something just immediately felt off. And as I'd mentioned to you guys, I did find out that Ripple was on in the software. And even after I disabled the Ripple feature, it still didn't feel necessarily right. And really the only option that I had left on was motion sync. And I do want to let you guys know, I played around with it quite a bit. I left motion sync enabled, disabled it. I tried a bunch of different settings. Turning motion sync off, I felt like it did help a little bit. But I'm telling you guys right now, something about this mouse just feels really off to me. But it is definitely noticeable when you're trying to play competitive FPS, fast-paced shooters online. All right, guys, so really quickly here, future Liam here. I've actually been testing this mouse out now for over a week, and I've got a pretty good idea and a pretty good feel for what could possibly be happening here at the mouse. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on everything. Basically, what I've noticed is, I'm not sure how well the camera is going to pick it up here, but if you could see that the actual base of the mouse is kind of bubbling out and it's kind of sticking out down here at the bottom. So again, I'm not sure how well it's going to come through on the camera. On top of that, with that being said, as you can see here, the censoring position on this mouse is pretty low. So what I have been kind of noticing is I have been obviously testing this out on different types of surfaces, soft pads, hard pads, all kinds of different things out there to see if I could still replicate the same issues kind of across the board, see if it's consistent. And what I've noticed is with how this is bubbling out, let me see if we can get a close up here. So hopefully you guys can see this. If you notice right here, the text on the bottom of this is actually worn off. And that's pure, I haven't been touching it, rubbing it with my fingers or anything like that. So I'm sure that's purely due to the fact that the bubble that's actually sticking out here on the base of the mouse is making contact with the surface on the pads. And obviously the PCB being attached to the base of the mouse, since this base right here, it is pretty uneven. It kind of sticks up more towards the back, dips down more narrow towards the center, and kind of rises up again here towards the front. So with that being said, since this is making contact with the surfaces, you know, when you're gaming, I'm constantly applying pressure, pushing down on the mouse, stuff like that, could obviously be moving the sensor around, and this could be the culprit right here. Could just be a defect in the product that I have, but I definitely wanted to bring this to your guys' attention to make sure that if you do decide to pick this mouse up, you know, something you could look out for, see if you notice anything wonky going on or anything like that. And with that being said, I have made sure that I do have the latest software and drivers that I could find available. Now, I do feel like the shape of this mouse, it is pretty good. It kind of has these aggressive corners here on the side. Overall in the hands, it doesn't feel too bad. It honestly feels like something that's pretty close in size and feeling of the VGN Dragonfly. So when it comes to comparing the shape between the M3 Mini and the Dragonfly F1, it's kind of crazy to me how exact these shapes are. They're very similar to one another. As you can see here, the front of the mouse, the height is pretty similar. I think that the Dragonfly might be just a little bit taller, but aside from that, the curve profile on the bottom of these mice almost feel identical. And from the back profile as well, I mean, just about everything, as you can see here, they're almost even about the same height. The one thing is that the M3 Mini, it does look a little pointier at the top of the mouse, whereas the Dragonfly looks a little bit smoother overall. And then one of the biggest noticeable differences between the shapes of these is I feel like this has a very aggressive edge right here, as you can clearly see right there. And I feel like the edges are just a bit softer on the Dragonfly, and overall I feel like the Dragonfly just feels a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more natural in the hands. And the last thing is you can clearly see here from the side profile, very similar. Obviously the Dragonfly comes out just a little bit longer on the base down here in the bottom, where at the very bottom here it curves in a little more aggressively on the M3 Mini. But overall these shapes are pretty identical to one another. And then next up we have the M3 Mini versus the Darmoshark M3. The Darmoshark M3, again, the shapes here are pretty comparable. They're pretty similar. I do feel like the Darmoshark M3, however, is just a little bit bigger. And when you're looking on the side profiles here, the Darmoshark M3 is just a little bit wider, and I feel like the curves on the M3 Mini are just a little bit more aggressive. And again, when it comes to the rear profile here on the hump, the Darmoshark M3 is just a little bit smoother from side to side, and I feel like there's a little bit more of a point on the M3 Mini. And again, I would have to say that these are pretty comparable in the hands as far as the shape goes. They're not too far apart from one another. But the biggest, most obvious difference with the Darmoshark M3 is it definitely does feel like a bigger mouse overall. And you notice it more so in the width. Next up, we have the M3 Mini versus the Viper V2 Pro. I do feel like the shape of these mice are pretty similar. You kind of do have a flatter overall feeling in the hands. And the curve profile on both of these mice, it feels pretty similar. The Razer Viper V2 Pro definitely feels a bit wider than the M3 Mini. And another thing on the top hump profiling here, as you can clearly see, again, it's just overall smoother. And I would say the Viper V2 Pro feels like a little bit of a flatter mouse. But when you do look at these mice from the side like this, I do feel like the Viper V2 Pro is a little bit flatter back here on the hump. And I do feel like you get a little bit extra support in the back palm of your hand with the M3 Mini. And these mice are obviously nowhere near each other in terms of performance, but since so many people are probably familiar with the Viper V2 Pro and have an idea on the shape and size, then I just want to throw this up here as a reference to give you guys kind of a closer idea on what you're looking at. And it kind of puts the M3 Mini in more of a medium-sized shape category as opposed to a mini version. right, and last but not least, I'm gonna go and throw it up against the Vaxee XE Wireless. I do feel like these shapes are pretty comparable to one another as far as the actual size goes. As you can see here in the front, the Vaxee XE Wireless sits a little bit lower in the front, and overall the Vaxee XE Wireless feels a little bit longer of a mouse at the base. However, both of these mice kind of have that middle hump profile where it quickly tapers off towards the rear, and as you can see on the M3 Mini, it kind of bubbles out more, and it kind of gives you a bit more stability in the back of the mouse, whereas the Vaxee XE Wireless just kind of has a more predominant hump in the top middle, and it does taper off more quickly to the rear of the mouse. And then when you move over to the top of the mouse here, as you can see, the Vaxee XE Wireless is much flatter from side to side, whereas the M3 Mini kind of feels a little bit more pointier at the top. And the Vaxee XE Wireless does kind of feel like a little bit of a wider mouse in the hands, and the M3 Mini has a bit more of aggressive curves, where I would say overall the Vaxee XE Wireless feels a little bit flatter on the sides. And though the size of these mice is pretty close, I would say that the Vaxee XE Wireless just feels like a bit of a larger mouse. Alright guys, so if you have any questions or you feel like there's anything I left out, please let me know down in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed watching this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in seeing more videos like this in the future. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.